Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me carefully. You're sitting here listening, probably thinking about all the things that could go wrong. You're playing scenarios in your head. What if I fail? What if I get rejected? What if I waste my time, lose money, ruin my rep, screw up everything? And I get it. It's easy to live in the what if it doesn't mindset. That's where 99% of people live. That's the comfort zone. That's the place where we build our little excuses, wrap them in logic, and sleep soundly next to them every night. But here's the thing, what if it does work out? What if instead of obsessing over the 1,000 ways it could fall apart, you lean all the way in and just act like it's all gonna click? What if you just believed it was already done? Not in some fake positive vibes way, not in some fantasy land BS, but in a practical, unshakable, grounded belief that whatever happens, even the losses, even the left turns, it's all happening for you. That mindset, that's the unlock, that's the cheat code. People always want to ask, what's the trick to winning? What's the secret to success? Let me give it to you straight. You've got to go all in as if you cannot lose. Because here's the twist. When you operate from that place, you stop hesitating, you stop double thinking every step. You stop overanalyzing whether you're good enough or ready enough or whether it's the right time. Let me break something to you. There is no right time. There is no magical moment where the universe aligns and hands you your dream on a silver platter. You decide it's your time, and you move. Let me tell you something about fear. It's clever. It wears 1,000 masks. Sometimes it looks like being smart. Sometimes it looks like being responsible. Sometimes it even sounds like your mom or your best friend or your own voice saying, be careful, but fear isn't your protector. It's your jailer. Fear will keep you locked up in a tiny little version of your life, forever wondering what could have been. So you want to build something, start it. You want to move. You want to post that video. Hit upload, you want to write the book, quit the job, change the game, do it. Act like you've already made it, not with arrogance, but with clarity, with certainty, with conviction. You show up every day like it's already happening. Because when you do that, your energy shifts, your actions align, you stop moving like a beggar and start moving like a builder. This isn't about fake confidence, this is about the work. It's about showing up so consistently, with so much faith in the outcome, that eventually the world has to pay attention, because most people are so addicted to doubt that they never even begin. And if they do begin, they whisper instead of roar. They tiptoe instead of sprint. They try instead of commit. Let me say something very clearly. Nobody who ever did anything great waited for certainty. Nobody who ever changed the game started by asking for permission. They decided right here in their gut that they were going to go full throttle and figure it out on the way. That's the mentality of someone who wins, and you know what happens when you act like it's going to work out. When you really commit like it's already handled, you stop needing everyone else to believe in you. You stop needing the approval. You stop looking sideways at what everyone else is doing. You stop comparing. Because you're not playing their game, you're building your own world, and yeah, are you going to get hit? Of course. You're going to eat dirt. You're going to fail. You're going to launch things that flop. You're going to get your heart broken. You're going to trust the wrong person, lose money, get criticized, feel stupid, want to quit. All of that's part of the deal, but guess what? You're still here. You're still breathing, you're still capable, you still get to play, and every time you get knocked down and stand back up with that same energy, like it's still going to work out, you become dangerous. You become untouchable because now you're not just resilient, you're inevitable. People can't compete with someone who's unshakably locked in, someone who takes L's and smiles, someone who misses and keeps swinging. You want to scare your competition, laugh when you lose, celebrate when it's ugly. That tells everyone around you, this one's not stopping. Let me ask you something. Do you really think the people who made it to the top had more luck than you? More talent, more resources, sure, some of them did. But most of them just had more belief, more grit. They were crazy enough to believe they could pull it off, even when they were broke, even when nobody was watching. Even when it looked dumb. And here's the truth, that mindset isn't reserved for a special few. That switch lives inside every single person in this room. You just have to flip it. You've got to decide right now that you're done living like the odds are against you. That you're done being your own biggest critic. That you're done waiting for signs. This is the sign, this moment, this voice, this fire in your gut that's waking up again. You didn't come this far to play small. You didn't survive what you survived just to doubt yourself now. You act like it's going to work out because that energy creates the outcome, because people are watching. The world notices when someone moves like they already believe it's handled. People start opening doors for you, opportunities show up, and you're not sitting around hoping. You're ready, that's the power, that's the mindset. You walk into the room like the future already belongs to you, not with ego, but with certainty. You talk like someone who already won. You prepare like someone who's building an empire. You show up like a king or queen before the crown. And here's the last thing I'll say. If you're waiting for someone else to hand you the green light, you'll be waiting forever. You are the green light. The second you decide it's already working, it starts working. So take the shot, make the call, move, build, fail, win, repeat, act like everything always works out. And sooner or later it will. You know what else happens when you show up like that? People start to question themselves, not in a bad way, in a wake-up way, because your energy exposes their hesitation. Your movement exposes their stillness. When you're in that everything's working out state, you don't even have to convince anybody. You just become the proof. You walking in the room is the message. You posting that content is the message. You waking up every day and doing the boring work that no one claps for. That's the message, and people notice. Maybe not right away, maybe not the first year or the second or the third. But if you stay moving like this, like it's already done, they will start asking you, how did you do it? They'll come to you like you have some secret formula, some hack, some tactic. But the truth is, the secret was the way you carried it before it made sense to them. That's the difference. That's what separates the ones who talk from the ones who build. Everybody loves to talk about patience until it's time to actually be patient. Everybody loves to talk about trusting the process until that process gets boring, but the ones who are acting like it's working, they're already celebrating the result that hasn't even shown up yet. They're making moves from a place of peace, not panic. They don't need proof to believe. Their belief becomes the proof. And I'll tell you what happens when you do this for long enough. You start to attract different things. You stop dealing with the same drama. You stop repeating the same cycles. You stop tolerating low frequency people who live in the land of doubt and excuses and passive aggression. They can't exist around your energy anymore. Not because you push them out, but because your momentum naturally leaves them behind. You become someone who moves too fast for fear to catch up. You're too focused to even hear the doubt. You're too busy building to waste time explaining. You don't argue with critics. You let the results talk. You don't chase people. You magnetize them. There's something really wild that happens when you start living like this. Time bends, momentum compounds. You'll get more done in 6 months of focused, fearless energy than you did in 6 years of waiting, wondering, half trying. Because when you're fully in it, time doesn't drag, it collapses. And look, I'm not saying you fake positivity. I'm not saying you ignore the struggle. I'm saying you carry the struggle like it's building your resume. You carry the pressure like it's shaping your shoulders. You carry the setbacks like they're setting the stage. Because that's exactly what they're doing, if you let them. You can't be the person who only believes when it's easy. You have to be the person who chooses belief even when it's messy, when it's dark, when it's silent. That's the work. That's where the foundation is built. You don't build belief on the mountaintop. You build it in the grind. You build it on the Tuesday mornings when nobody's watching. You build it when the metrics are flat. You build it when you're posting and nobody's liking, when you're trying and nobody's clapping, when you're giving everything and it feels like nothing's moving. You build it there, and if you keep going, you start to realize that those quiet seasons, those are the test. Anyone can believe when the results are rolling in, but the ones who get to the real levels, they believe before the evidence shows up. And the wild part, that belief is usually what causes the evidence. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need a clear map. You don't need a backup plan. You need conviction. You need to look at what you want and say, this is mine, and then start behaving like it's already on the way. Not out of entitlement, but out of purpose. You start making decisions from the version of you who's already arrived. That version of you, they don't stress over opinions. They don't wait for validation. They don't play small to make other people comfortable. They move like a leader. They speak with clarity. They trust themselves. That's the version you tap into right now, not when you have more followers, not when you hit 6 figures, not when someone finally discovers you right now, because it's not the circumstances that make that version real, it's the decision. You decide to show up like the person who already has it. You decide to speak like it's already yours. You decide to work like the outcome is inevitable. And when people ask, how are you so calm? How are you so certain? Why are you so relentless? You just smile because they don't get it yet. But they will. They'll see it when the thing you've been carrying in your heart finally shows up in the world. They'll call it luck. They'll say you blew up. They won't see the nights you didn't quit. They won't see the 1,000 times you said it's working, even when it looked like it wasn't, but you'll know exactly what created the result, and that's the power nobody can take from you. You keep showing up, and suddenly momentum starts to kick in. It doesn't look dramatic at first. It's subtle. The email you thought would get ignored gets answered. The meeting you were nervous about goes better than expected. The offer you made that got no attention last month, this time people click. The client that ghosted you before, they circle back. You start noticing these little shifts, not miracles, just movement. And it builds. Every action you take from that, it's already working. Mindset adds weight to your momentum. You make smarter moves. You become more generous. You give more, not because you're desperate for recognition, but because you're overflowing with certainty. And that's rare. People feel it. They lean in. You're not selling anymore, you're attracting. You're not convincing, you're leading. That's a whole different frequency. And people don't know how to describe it, but they feel it. They want to be around it. They want to follow it because it's not hype. It's alignment. You're not chasing your dreams. You're moving like they're chasing you, but you gotta understand something. It's not a switch you flip once. It's a choice you make daily. You wake up and decide again, everything is working. I don't need the scoreboard to reflect it yet. I know where this is going, because the scoreboard isn't always caught up with the effort. Sometimes you're 10 steps ahead of what the numbers show, but if you trust that lag, if you trust that every seed you're planting is going to break ground, you stay consistent. That consistency is where everybody falls off. They want fireworks in 30 days. They want applause on the first draft. They want a standing ovation before they've finished Act 1, but you're different. You're not here for temporary validation. You're here to build legacy. And legacy takes time. It takes belief that doesn't flinch. It takes moving forward when there's no music playing, no crowd cheering, no check clearing. It's you. Alone in your apartment or car or office or bedroom, looking in the mirror and saying, I've already won. I'm just giving the world time to catch up. That voice inside you, that one that keeps nudging, pulling, whispering there's more, you owe it your loyalty. Not your fear, not your doubt, not your old story. That voice is the real you. The one who knows what you're capable of. The one who's seen your future already and is trying to drag you toward it, even when you keep hesitating. You've got to get to a point where backing down is not an option, where comfort feels like poison, where you'd rather stumble forward than stand still, where you'd rather look foolish than live invisible. Because if you're not willing to be misunderstood, ignored, laughed at, doubted, then you're not ready for greatness. You can't play big while trying to stay safe. You can't do something unforgettable while needing everyone to like you. You can't climb with your hands full of excuses. You drop the doubts, you drop the baggage, you drop the story that says, I'm not ready, and pick up the one that says, watch me. You do it broke, you do it scared. You do it imperfect, but you do it. That's what separates you. Most people are still waiting for confidence before they take action. You're taking action until confidence shows up. And once it does, it never leaves because it knows it's earned. You start to move differently. You start protecting your energy. You stop explaining your decisions to people who have never built anything. You stop shrinking your dreams down to fit in other people's comfort zones. You stop apologizing for having ambition. You stop second guessing your boldness. You stop playing the victim. You stop needing someone to rescue you. You realize nobody's coming, but that's the best news. Because now you're free, now it's your game, now it's your rules, and if you lose, so what? You adjust, you adapt, you pivot, you sharpen, you learn, you go again. That's what people who act like it always works out do. They don't crumble when the plan breaks, they don't panic when the timeline shifts, they stay grounded, they stay creative, they keep moving because they don't see failure as final, they see it as data. They don't see rejection as a stop sign. They see it as a detour. They don't take no personally. They take it as proof they're pushing into new territory. This is the long game. This is the path of people who actually change their lives. This is where the real players are made. Not in the moments where everything's easy, but in the moments where you're doubting and still doing, where you're hurting and still showing up, where you're being told it's not realistic and still building it anyway. You want to know who you really are. Watch what you do when nothing's guaranteed. Watch how you move when it looks like the door is shut. Watch how you speak to yourself when no one else is around. That's the real you. And if you can train that version to act like everything is unfolding perfectly regardless of the weather, regardless of the news, regardless of the noise, then you become unstoppable. You become a force that can't be ignored, not because you're yelling louder, but because your consistency speaks volumes, because your presence says, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, I'm building this whether you believe in me or not. That kind of energy is magnetic. People start shifting when you enter a room, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because they can feel that you're already certain. They're trying to figure it out, and you're already living like it's figured. And the truth is, that makes people uncomfortable, because when you move like that, it reminds them that they could too. It reminds them that the reason they haven't isn't because they couldn't, it's because they didn't choose to yet. And maybe that's part of your role. Maybe you weren't just meant to succeed quietly. Maybe you're here to wake people up just by being yourself fully. Maybe your confidence isn't arrogance, it's permission. Permission for someone else to believe they can be more, have more, do more. That's how impact works. It's not always in the speech. It's not always in the post. It's in the energy behind the actions. The tone in your voice, the look in your eyes, the way you keep going when everyone else paused. You become a living reminder that belief isn't about external proof, it's about internal commitment. And once you lock that in, every room you walk into is different. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to chase validation. You don't need to manipulate outcomes. You just be fully, authentically, boldly, and everything starts shifting around you because the world moves differently when you move with certainty. People want to work with you, they want to buy from you, they want to collaborate, they want to help, not because you begged, but because you embodied the version of yourself that everyone else was still waiting for permission to become. That's the real game, not the quick win, not the hack, not the gimmick, the embodiment, the decision to live as if it's all working out, even when it's quiet, even when it's slow, even when the numbers don't add up yet. Because you know the numbers are catching up, the world is catching up, the results are catching up, and when they do, you're not surprised, you're grateful, but you're not shocked, because deep down you always knew. You decided it was happening, you backed that decision with action, you showed up like it was done, you moved like someone who couldn't lose, and that made all the difference, because when you move like that, when you walk in purpose instead of pressure, everything starts to align. The right people come into your life not by accident, but because your energy pulled them in. The right opportunities land in your lap not by luck, but because your consistency created gravity. You became undeniable. Not because you were the loudest, the richest, the smartest, but because you refused to quit. You kept sowing when others stopped. You kept believing when others doubted. You kept building while others watched. And when the breakthrough came, you were ready. Not because it was easy, but because you acted like it was always coming. That mindset doesn't just get you to your goals, it redefines you along the way. It shapes how you carry yourself in meetings, how you speak on calls, how you deal with conflict, how you manage stress. You're no longer reactive, you're proactive. You're no longer searching for signs. It's you who becomes the signal. The pace setter, the blueprint. You start approaching problems differently. You don't ask, what if this fails? You ask, what's the lesson here? You don't freeze when things go sideways. You pivot. You don't make fear-based decisions, you make vision-based ones. And that's why people start asking you for advice, why they start watching your content, why they start modeling their strategies after yours. They don't even realize they're drawn in by your certainty, that unshakable calm, that grounded intensity, that clarity that says, this is already mine, I'm just moving in alignment with it. And even if they can't put it into words, they feel it. Because it's rare, and while everyone else is waiting for motivation, you've already moved on to execution. While they're debating and overthinking and asking 10 people for opinions, you've already launched, iterated, refined. You're in it, and being in it changes everything. You're not sitting on the sidelines anymore wondering if you're enough. You're in the arena, bleeding if you have to, but smiling, because this is where you belong. That's where the game changes, not because you've arrived, but because you finally realized you were never supposed to wait to arrive. You were supposed to show up like you already belonged, like you already had what it takes. Like you already earned your place at the table. You're not proving, you're expressing, you're not striving, you're delivering. That's the energy shift that makes everything else bend in your favor. And not because the world owes you, but because you've earned it with your belief, your persistence, your refusal to fold. People ask how you keep going when it looks like nothing's working. The truth. You're not looking at the scoreboard, you're looking at the standard. Your standard is higher than your circumstances. Your identity is stronger than your environment. You don't move based on what you see, you move based on what you know. And that kind of conviction doesn't come from hype. It comes from discipline, from choosing every single day to carry yourself like someone who already won, from showing up to your goals like the outcome is guaranteed, and the only thing you're doing now is matching your effort to your destiny. That's the kind of energy that builds empires, that shifts industries, that makes history, and it's not because you had everything figured out. It's because you decided to move anyway, and that decision. That's where everything begins to change, so here's the truth. Everything you want, everything you're chasing, everything that feels out of reach, it's already yours the moment you decide it is. The results are just catching up to your belief. And yeah, the world might not recognize it yet, the people around you might not understand it yet, the bank account might not reflect it yet. But you know, deep down you know, because when you act like everything always works out, you stop wasting time on doubt. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop handing your power to opinions, delays, and failures. You own your journey. You command your space. You become the person who doesn't wait for permission, applause, or validation. You just build, you move, you lead, and one day soon, when everything you've been working for finally shows up, not as a surprise, but as a reflection of who you've become. Remember this. It didn't happen because you were lucky. It happened because you believed, you showed up, and you never flinched. You lived like it was already happening, and that made it real.